Welcome back to Streaming Media Connect 2026. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Steve Nathans Kelly, editor of Streaming Media, chair of Streaming Media Connect, and your host for today. If you have come here to see ad insertion under fire, monetizing live events without breaking the stream, you have come to the right place. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. At the end of the session, we will give away a $50 Amazon gift card to the first person who correctly identified the artist and the track that you just heard as we were joining the session. You must be present to win. The chat is open, so chat in the chat and put your questions for the panel in the Q&A tab, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the session. Sessions from all 3 days of Streaming Media Connect are already appearing on the Streaming Media YouTube channel. A link to the playlist for those sessions is in the chat now. We'll be back here for the next Streaming Media Connect, May 12th to 14th. And the call for speakers is open and the link is in the chat. So let us know if you want to speak, what your area of expertise is, and what you'd like to talk about. If you have any panel topics to suggest, we'd love to hear them. We'll be starting to plan that next week. And without further ado, I would like to welcome the one and only CJ Leonard, VP Publisher Operations at FanServ. Hey, CJ.
Hi, Steve, and I'd love to have my panelists join us for this session on everything breaks, what's going on with live ad insertion. So I'll just Dave Zur, if you'd like to kick it off.
Hi, I'm Dave Zur. I'm with Altitude Sports, part of the Kroenke family of companies. We have a lot of NHL, NBA, EL, Premier League product. We have family at SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park, and got a lot of things going on.
Toss it to David.
Hi, my name is David Hassoun. I am the SVTA co-chair for the ads work group and also the dean at the SVTA University. And do a bunch of streaming media consulting as well after running my own development shop for about 18 years and getting acquired by Dolby Labs.
And Sarge.
Hi, I'm Sarge. I run Sargeway LLC. We're also a media consulting shop. I am former Adobe, former Peacock, former Disney. Worked over the last 2 decades a lot in live events. So looking forward to the discussion today. I also work with David on the SVTA ads and university.
No, we'll definitely dive into all of that shortly. What I really appreciate today, what we have here with the panelists, is that we have a national tentpole event sort of lens, and then we also have the local RSN lens through Dave. So I think as we cover this big and small, long seasons and tentpoles like Olympics and Super Bowl, we have the gamut here. So I'll just dive into the first question. When we talk about, Jared Wolochinsky in a prior keynote had said, everything breaks, paraphrasing, in live ad insertion. So just, it's February 2026. Every year there's advancements, but there's still issues. So what are the most common failure points each of you are still seeing in real world deployments today? Sarge, why don't we kick off with you?
Yeah, I mean, you see failures through the whole stack. So if we just look at, never mind the ingest points, let's assume your ingest is all good. Your failures are going to typically come when your viewers start thrashing your connection. So you're talking at the CDN level, you're talking at your authentication level, so your TVE layer, if you have that. You're talking your ad insertion level, and your mid tiers for the content. So everything needs to be fully redundant. You want to pre-cache as much as possible. I know we'll talk about doing some pre-flighting of ads probably later on in the discussion. But all those things you need to look at, especially at all layers, including down to your fiber providers, because you can have a failure at that level that will knock down your stream.
Dave or David, anything that at this point you thought would have been solved and you're still, dealing with at this point, or anything that you has been solved from your perspective that was plaguing us for a long time in the industry?
Well, I mean, to me, like, in days and years past, like, I did a lot of work with NBC Sports, I worked with Sarge there, and a bunch of others, and a number of events, and there, oftentimes, we still had different challenges. Things would go wrong, something would happen. As Sarge said, it could be anywhere within that stack. Nowadays, like, I think like a lot of the baseline has been more solidified. It's not as maybe as much as the random issues. They still happen. Like, oh crap! Well, even on the CDN, like, well, there's this one node within the within a regional cluster that's causing problems, and you have to isolate it, find out that type of thing, or something's going wrong with something else upstream. But what we still see is more issues around the unpredictable, right? When you have something that could be this unpredictable audience and bursts there, like systems don't always handle these drastic changes, and they never have. But I think nowadays we see more of that. So maybe less of the kind of in between random stuff, but more of, well, this event could be massive or it might not be, and it's harder to gauge when you have that kind of, I don't know if I want to say the viral hit, but the more element of like, okay, great, we can provision to a degree, but we don't know for sure if this is going to be something that really goes forward, be based off of how the teams do or other factors that we just weren't prepared for. And that's where we see, I think, a lot of that. A lot of the issues still that are really bad, the really bad ones that come forward and hit and have a wider spread impact. So it all depends on a matter of like, where do you have that unpredictable burst or other factor that's coming in nowadays?
Yeah, to add to Sarge and David's comments, it's almost anywhere in the stack at any given day based on how the stars align and what you had for breakfast. But I think in this click happy society, we I would say I think we see a little more player behavior challenge because somebody didn't get what they want. They just start clicking like mad. And now all of a sudden they've either locked things up or there's massive buffering. And now we start getting challenging comments coming back in our response, where we take all of our I don't want to say complaints, but all of our feedback regarding the apps. For the most part, it's things like NHL, the NBA, the content that Sergeant David had mentioned has to be high availability. So we've all tried to do our homework to make certain that we're really ready for this. It's hard to pre-cache enough, but it's obviously great when we can. And CJ, working with you, you're the metrics coming from what you guys do have been a real eye opener for us to see what's occurring and really what's going on with the game. The better the game is, the more I get worried about the performance of the app, to be honest, because we know the eyeballs are there.
Yeah, the only comment I'll make there is just coming from the ad side, making sure that the engineering side and the advertising operations side are in lockstep, whether you're working with an RSN or working alongside the teams at the Olympics, like the war rooms that NBC puts on, the dress rehearsals. There has to be that no one lives in a silo. So there's a lot of that the communication aspects that Dave and I have fostered through our current relationship between Altitude and FanServ has been great. Super thankful for that because again, ad operations. We'll kind of move into some of the tech items, but ad operations at times, you're just sending ads in a vast tag, and where it fails downstream or upstream, you're trying to help, and then you're blind. So having experts like yourself to help coach on both sides is really helpful. Next piece as we go through for premium live events where latency expectations are tightening, right? Especially in live sports where, if I'm on a piece of VOD content, maybe I'll wait a little longer. But with gambling and betting and so forth, at the forefront, and the latency expectations just getting lower and lower. How do you think about the trade-offs between server-side ad insertion, client-side ad insertion? Is anyone getting into SGAI? That's been a conversation, but I haven't touched it personally in any of my roles. And is there a clear winner at this stage that you're looking at for any of that?
To me, I think latency creates a huge challenge for ads in general, right? The lower the latency, the less time we have to resolve in normal ad workflows or let's say traditional ad workflows, especially when it's a red button thing, right? When we don't know when the ad's going to have to hit, or even when there's a certain variance within there. And it really complicates things and makes things a lot more fragile. Now, if you get even lower and you talk about things like betting and so forth, you're talking about, near real-time stuff, that is even more of a challenge, right? And even takes that further. To me, when you talk about, CSAI, SSAI, or SGAI, and if latency is one of your biggest concerns, SGI is the only way to go. in my opinion, because especially if you're comparing it to SSAI, SSAI 1 is going to have more latency anyway. So every step along that change is going to add more latency to it. So you already have a latency incursion there. And then you also have central processing. It starts creating a big potential challenge. With SGAI and kind of pre-announcing and pre-resolving ads, you can really look to solve that. Now, SGI versus CSAI, I mean, they're both client side. And a lot of this goes down to how you really define the two and so forth. Oftentimes in CSAI, there's deemed as interpretations that I've seen in talking to different work groups is that there's no kind of the pre-resolution and so forth, and there's less of that kind of more advanced buffer management that you'll get out of SGI. So hands down SGI, and we are seeing customers starting to move that way, but there are challenges, of course, and limitations on resources and so forth that make that a concern. And I've talked with some bigger companies, like, well, what are their biggest concerns to go into and some of that. But that's where I think if latency is your biggest one, SGI is the way to go.
Sarge, I'm going to let you go next because mine's from a very regional sports centric, and we're less concerned about the latency than we are the measurement. But please, sir.
Nah, man, I don't really have anything more to add to what David said because we're pretty much in the same camp. Like, and we've worked together on so many events, so we've seen the same things. But like you said, the SGAI, CJ, I don't know. To me, SGAI is now more commonplace than SSAI and CSAI. I think more people are drinking the Kool-Aid, certainly in the last 3 to 5 years. So to me, it's more prevalent. Like David said, there are issues with SSAI and pre-flighting. And then SGAI is basically a component of both client side and SSAI. It's kind of the best of both worlds. So you can pre-flight your ads, precondition your ads, pre-resolve those ads and get them cached, and you're going to eliminate much of the latency with the SGAI. But you still can have latency on the VAST side, and that's going to inhibit or increase your latency across both of those, or all three ad technologies. It doesn't matter if you're CSAI, SSAI, or SGAI. If your VAST vendors are slow or your ad server is slow in resolving the ad, you're still going to be latent.
And either way, like Sarge kind of pointed out, like VAST is still going to be a bottleneck no matter what.
Mhm.
And it also is your fault point, right? It doesn't matter what technology you use. If your ad decisioning and your ad, through the ad decision delivery stuff can't stand up, can't handle the scale, can't handle the load, that's the issue. So like, as I mentioned, one thing that has been holding people back from going to SGI is there's been a lot of work over the years put in to really work through some of these challenges with SSAI as best they can. Now, latency is creating even more of a challenge, and once you've already squeezed the fruit dry and you try to squeeze it more, you might not get anything else out of it. And that's when you have to adopt a new technology. But like I spoke with a couple larger organizations, and like their concerns were around like, we've tuned out SSAI and handle things like, ad smearing, right? So that not all the ad calls will happen at the same time, pre-resolving ads in logical ways, but that still adhere to a lot of the real challenging rule sets that need to happen with ads and the costs associated with that, so that there's actually appropriate returns if you resolve, but they don't deliver and that type of stuff, to really work that through. And I think that's one of the things that are still a little bit lagging in SGI and the service providers, that they can deliver SGI at the same level of complexity needed for some of these larger organizations that they tuned out oftentimes privately with these organizations that they're using SSAI with to get the more advanced needs that they need out of it. Otherwise, it's just more work, and that's always a challenge. Like, it's work to change to any new technology.
Yeah, and I think we've looked at the SSAI side where we're at, it's kind of been the gold standard for the premium sports, right? But it's been a little tougher measurement. The SGAI certainly offers a better of both worlds when you're looking at a measurement component, the lean back experience, coverage across all the different devices. But it's it's still pretty fledgling. I got to be careful what we tamper with, especially during, again, the high availability events.
Yeah, well, and just with that, obviously there's the ad server monitoring, but how, offense, defense, when you're looking at different issues from an operational standpoint on the engineering side, what monitoring or observability signals should teams prioritize? whether it's, tonight's Nuggets game or it's last week's Olympics, that they're prioritizing during those events from the engineering side. What are your flags that there's a problem when someone hasn't flagged something from the ad server side?
Would somebody like to jump on that?
I mean, I can always talk, but if you got something, Dave, hit it. I know that you also
Well,
focus a lot within.
We're really about, and I know, Sarge, you kind of mentioned, the encode is kind of the given. I wish it were. With the sources we get from all over the planet, whether coming out of Canada, wherever it might be, our encode is always our first step. So, of course, video quality and integrity. Then, has the manifest been degraded in any way as it handles through? I mean, we're only as good as our CDNs and our players at the end of the day. So, really trying to make certain that the content that's being pushed out is exactly what everyone expects, and being, I think one of the bigger challenges, the monitoring side, is a lot of our engineering, we're only in communication via Slack. We don't have the traditional broadcast infrastructure of eyes on glass. In many of these cases, somebody might be halfway around the world in a different time zone. It's yesterday or it's tomorrow, whatever it might be, and we're interacting with them live regarding problems that are popping up. That's been maybe one of the bigger challenges as far as the monitoring. As far as resolution, you can only do so much. Again, we don't want to tamper too much with the game, but we want to try to correct it for our viewers and fans as quickly as possible. So again, a lot of it's garbage in, garbage out, or quality in, quality out. But there are the days with quality in, you get a little garbage on the backside.
Yeah, that's the truth. Garbage in, garbage out is definitely true to the system. But my experience, I've had the opportunity to lead from both the video engineering side and from the ad tech side. One of the things that my live team at Disney does is they actually do monitor encode, because to your point, if it's crap coming in, we're definitely crap coming out. We're also monitoring the um, the SCSAI signals. So we're making sure the ad breaks are proper in place. Not only are they on time, but are they of the right type? And for Peacock's workflows, we actually did embed custom code into the SCSAI signal. So we would send messaging um, that described the ad break, so the ad server had more detail so it can do different things. But to your point, you're right. If it's garbage in, then you're going to get garbage out of the system. So the encode is very important. What I was pointing out in my opening was that I was saying, let's just say that that's all good. But
Oh, I
yeah,
understand completely.
yeah,
And we
yeah.
have to
So
try to assume something works, right?
yeah, from a monitoring standpoint, we've been fortunate enough to be able to use Slack or Teams to stay real-time communications for our operation systems and support systems. So it's been working out at those two employers for me, or those two publishers, I would say. I'm not sure how other teams do it. I believe, talking to some of our peers, a lot of them still use Slack to do real-time communications, but you got to have the eyes on glass. That's kind of mandatory for a live event, especially tentpole events. You're going to have multiple people on glass, and you're going to have multiple people not only in-house, like in a data center or knock or DNOC, and you're going to have remote viewers as well. So most of my teams have been remote. So we'll have a guy, like, for example, my setup, I have like multiple TVs and multiple devices running. And same for my teams. We want to have multiple devices. So you're looking at your ad break on a Roku versus a tvOS, and definitely multiple desktop versions, different browsers. So you're getting a full range of what's happening in the stream.
With a
So,
product, I'm super quick, David, with
yeah,
a product
yeah.
like ours where we're supporting both TVE and D2C, I wish I could have probes all over the market for all of the providers, because you just can't monitor everything, and to see who's taking the veils, who's stepping on them, who's leaving a veil open, etc.
Probe
David.
every DMA would be amazing, but that doesn't usually isn't realistic. I'm going to answer the question in probably a completely different way because I thought it meant something else. But then we get a spread, like maybe just going a little more on some specifics. I mean, to me, when we were doing these larger events and having to monitor, like especially from the ad flow, is one being able to see the metrics around, okay, from ad request to vast received, right? What's that time? If that starts to grow, and how is that handling with growing audience? That's really, really important. That's an indicator if you're having ad decisioning services issues, as well as a little bit on the delivery, but the delivery itself is very minor, right? They're small files, but high value. So then from after that, it was a lot of also then looking at things like Conviva or whatever your flavor of choice is, but how are the actual ads being delivered over the wire, right? We could, when I was just monitoring a Conviva dashboard for live, I could tell you exactly when an ad break was without ever looking at a screen, just by looking at the results, because the ads always get delivered slower. They're not as well cached. There's, of course, different things with personalization going on, and especially if you're using kind of open market stuff, it can be a real, man, let's just call it a shit show. So, looking to see how things are delivering and how that's affecting your buffering. And once again, if you have lower latency, you have less amount of buffer, does that create drift now to content? And those are other factors within there. So seeing how that goes. And then to take a little bit further on what Dave and Sarge were talking about, it's a matter of not just eyes on glass, which is super important, and also the encoding, but looking what happens with those ads. We had so many instances, especially when things are open market or otherwise, even when we were doing site sold ads, where certain ads or their companion ads would really break or hurt the overall experience. It would lag the machines, it would create buffering, it would stutter, or if there was like a segment that wasn't encoded properly and is just like 1 second segment. This is type of things that have been more resolved over the years, but still can creep up, and that can crash your whole app. So having those eyes on glass and being able to review those ads, especially if you can't review them all ahead of time, if they are going to be programmatic, but as many screens, many devices, as Sarge said, being able to watch this stuff, it's a drop in the bucket. It seems like, but that drop can make a big difference to be able to isolate issues and see what's going on. So it's a matter of looking at all your network delivery, looking at your performance metrics from your player, your QoE, QoS, and trying to also have that data around your ad services. Gives you a little bit of that picture, the entire picture. And I say a little bit because, oh God, there's so much more that this is really hard to monitor and see unless you have, as Dave mentioned, a node in every location and region, and variance and personalization and local avails and all this other stuff. It becomes very challenging to have high confidence in everything.
Yeah, to that point, you definitely have to be able to filter out the noise because you can have so many dashboards that you're monitoring so many different things, and you want to be able to quickly identify what's an actual problem versus what's something that's temporary or something that may be affecting one person out of a stream of 1,000. So it's very crucial to be able to monitor everything, but know what you're monitoring and being able to filter out the noise.
That's a really great point, Sarge, because it's okay. I can look at a dashboard, but I don't necessarily see with the same eyes. And to have multiple dashboards and see the concatenation of this happened and that happened. Hold on, are these there's a great deal of that occurs in the streaming world. Here in a broadcast facility, we go patch around something. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And so it's a real gift when someone like Sarge or David can say, this is happening, it caused all that downstream, because it's not always obvious.
Definitely. I think, David, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we do have some guests from IAB on the panel or in the audience right now, and I'll get into some of that as well with signaling and so forth. But do you want to speak about anything happening on the SVTA ads committee that may be applicable here?
Sure. I mean, right now we're working on, so we have a couple different initiatives. The main one is version 3 of the ad signaling spec that previously Zach Kava was leading off from Disney. And right now what we're focusing on is things within nonlinear ads. And we're lining up with IAB and the TV work group there around what those experiences are, how they're going to default be rendered, but it's kind of looking to take where they kind of end off within the VAST spec and what happens within the manifests for signaling and the player experiences for rendering for both HLS and Dash. Like I said, primarily for nonlinear concurrent ads right now, but it's been all about server guided as the kind of the first step of that. And that's going really good. We also have some work going on in the proposed document that we're working towards for more stuff on skippable ads, and what needs to happen there within the client experiences, as well as collaboration. I believe we set it up to be collaborative between IAB and SVTA as well on contextual metadata for ads, and brand with a focus on brand safety. So that way, if you as a provider of a stream, you don't end up getting ads that conflict with your brand image and messaging and so forth, by making ad requests more contextual for the actual content that's within there. And that's something that the ads work group ended up taking on.
Let me differentiate between us, because to me, those are two different projects. One is on brand safety for sure, making sure that you get an ad and based on the metadata, your ad is safe for your brand, not only from the advertiser side, but also from the publishing side. So I'm not, Disney's not putting in some particular ad that's going to damage their brand. And that's one thing. The other thing, the deeper contextualized ads is being able to look at scenes and detect something in the scene and provide that metadata to the ad workflow so that the ad decisioning server can make a decision on what ad to actually serve back to that content based on what the user is seeing in that scene. So that's another project that's kind of newer. I know there's a talk tomorrow about it that Pravesh
Is that in the metadata group?
moderating. No, so you asked me to lead it. So I'm
Okay,
gonna
good.
lead
That's what I was
it.
like. That sounds like it should be in our group.
No, it's not fully in their group, but it both of those last two they kind of sit between the ads and the metadata groups for the SVTA, and I'm in both groups. So and I've been talking about contextualized ads for a couple of months now. So I'm going to lead it. We're probably going to put together a spec and present it to IAB because we do want to get their feedback and their input into it as well. But like I said, there's a talk about it tomorrow that Bhavesh is moderating. I don't know if Steve can put that into the chat, but it should be a good conversation tomorrow.
No, that's great to hear because great to hear what SVTA is doing. I've always come from the ad op side, so IAB was my go-to, and then I've been there's other organizations, SMPTE, we talk about Scuddy triggers, and trying to get everyone on board. Dave and I have been through the ringer on Scuddy triggers.
Everybody loves Scuddy triggers,
Everybody
especially
loves
my
that.
boss.
It's
He just can't wait
segmentation,
to get
UPIDs, and
Yes.
so for someone that's coming from the ad op side who's playing a bit of battleship, but I use that phrase a lot, but kind of looking over the side, going, I think it's here, I just need this value there, and Dave's on the other side going, yep, I got it in. Definitely, I don't know, maybe we can talk about that for a moment because Sarge, you brought it up earlier, the signaling process and all the different places, whether it's on the client, whether it's coming from the logs. Maybe we can talk a little bit about, yeah, and I'm just trying to get it to the bid stream, right? I'm trying to get into the ad request out to the bid stream and follow the RTB, 2.6 spec and so forth. What are some of the challenges that you see when trying to just get basic signals? For example, live stream equals 1 or 0 has been a challenge for me at times, and we've found different ways around that. Like, am I just in a kind of in a dark corner and I need to get out of that, or are
Oh,
there challenges with Scuddy triggers that you think are still being solved, and what's been your biggest challenges with those for when it comes to ads?
yeah, and one is just agreeing on what type of signal you're going to send. You're going to send, your standard, um, your time signal, or you're going to send your standard DPO. Um, are you then deciding on the ad IDs and the signaling IDs? Um, it's even going down to just did the logger, enter it right at the right time. That's number one. The human factor of it is number one. Getting, if you're having manual logging, getting that logger to actually log it and enter that signal on time. And then we've seen at Disney, we had discussions within the company around agreeing on a Scuddy spec and agreeing on signals because if you look at Disney, ABC, ESPN, they all have their own different specs. So trying to get to a common spec so we can use one signaling flow to reduce some of the overhead of different things. Other issues you have is, okay, the Scuddy came in right, but is it the right messaging? Is it in the right format? Something that the actual DAI can understand so it can parse it and then actually make the ad call. So those are some of the things that I've seen on a day to day.
Yeah, CJI, you've been very kind about what you've said about what we're doing. We started really trying to embrace the 224. I think it was driven mainly out of the business case. Our management wanted to do a lot of different things. We have used the spec pretty lightly for the dynamic ad insertion side, and triggering an NBA start event, NBA end event, etc. Segmenting out the different shows. We're leaving normal programming. We're going to shoulder, whatever it might be, so that those are rated properly and handled properly within your side of the business. From a uh, from the triggering side, as I mentioned in our pre-call, we really wanted to look at how would we give our individual program providers and or endpoints their own set of triggers, and really trying to create a good fences make good neighbors environment, so that we knew somebody wasn't stepping on ours, etc. And that whether it's a Samsung or whoever, Zumo, whoever, that they're getting the ads that have been contractually obligated. And they may be different ad payloads. Somebody may get 15%, somebody may get 12%. So we just can't fire out a single trigger and expect everyone to act on it properly. So we went down that path. It's been a little bit more teething pain, and we're looking to truly deploy it based on the provider IDs. We're still much more in just a duration mode, but we're using a whole lot of web embargoes and all sorts of things for some of our product, a lot of start stop, a lot of things that will really end up controlling the 224 down the road. But the business case for us is a little different in that we're using a linear product. We have a linear sales group who's selling into this, as you know. So it's a brave new world for them, trying to really strategize how do we use the brake pods appropriately. And with over-the-air partnerships, they're getting their time. So making a pass-through work can be different from day to day. And it's good. Plus, is I think Sarge, I think you mentioned the supplier adjacencies. So we take a lot of content that already has baked in billboards and things like that. We need to make certain that if it's a Toyota ad, that we're not immediately dumping a Dodge ad right on the back end of it. So all that standard traffic, sort of the old broadcast category adjacency and all that sort of thing, protecting the categories is a little harder to kind of feel in the dynamic ad inserted world. Now, what they were doing at Disney, and it sounds like what David had done, is absolutely wonderful to hear, heading that direction, so that we have more control over that. But you've seen it from us. We're trying to sell all this, and how do we schedule this spot in a dynamic ad insertion? Well, you really can't.
And the level,
Yeah.
it goes back to signals too, right? So, if there's the better the signaling, the better the targeting, but at the same time, what are the offsets? Like, what is the extra level of effort for when you're working with the log? And it's really where what I've seen through our relationship is just where broadcast and digital really meet. Because I think in other digital first environments that I've personally been in, you're not looking at it through the same lens. It's, you're trying to translate from one language to another in our case between our two businesses, whereas linear, I mean, David and Sarge, is that similar to what you're seeing in where it's a broadcast feed, or is there a digital first, all slated out feed that's coming in for some of the events? Like, how does that work on more of the national Disney without getting too far into secret sauce? Like, how does that work compared to what Dave just said on the local side?
I'll let David go.
I was gonna let you go.
Okay, I'll go. So I've seen it both ways.
Okay.
At Disney and Peacock, and without giving away their secret sauces, they have, like I said, both. They have a national linear feed where you, on the back end of that linear break, you add in the DPO for the locals so that you have a chance for the system to do DAI, so a dynamic ad on the back end. So you usually get like your local garage or pizza place, right? And then I've seen digital first, so you do have a slated screen. So all the ads from the linear stream is actually slated out. So then for the digital only, they can insert whatever ads they want for the entire break. So I've seen it both ways. And I've seen where, like, to Dave's point, where you have you have a breakpoint between each system. So if we take that linear feed and we want to send it to multiple different players on different networks, all those network players have to understand the signaling in that stream in order for the DAI to work. Otherwise, you'll just get the national ad, and then you may get either, hopefully you get a slate if the local doesn't play, if that DAI doesn't understand that local break is supposed to play, or you get black. So, David.
What he said.
Yeah, and look, I think
That is not my area.
there's a couple ways to skin that cat. I mean, we're trying to do a lot with our air path, admittedly so. I would love to have a completely separate digital only derived mechanism for it. But the economy of scales is, we weren't really able to put that together. And it's the same game. So for practical purposes, decorating the air log or all of the digital, it's got some drawbacks. There's no question about it. But the ad tiering first and foremost allows us to do, as Sarge mentioned, give our affiliates their time. Because the big cable still it pays a lot of what goes on around here. And with that, they get all their avails. We've separated that from the streaming payload, and there's still all the linear playthrough. But yeah, it's a challenge to really juggle that. So the triggering is when you asked about monitoring, that is one of the most monitored pieces we have. We're logging everything and able to really confirm with our endpoints.
Yeah, we're able to monitor and log the triggers coming in band, so in the public stream, and also when it actually hits the player, because it's in the HLS and dash manifest.
Yeah, I mean, at some point we're looking to literally switch territories and stuff as part of the overall regimen and the overall decoration. I mean, shy of having a foot switch in the truck where the guy can hit it at the end of the event and trigger all the, whoever's got to move away.
Yeah.
I'm not ready for that, but it's not far off.
Well, and I know, we're talking about a lot of the manual effort and so forth with some of the insertion and just monitoring in general. I'm in a closed setting. I'm testing 8 different devices for a baseball app launch coming up. And that's, not in the wild, right? That's just me on the device. I know what device it was, but just kind of looking to AI, because what's a panel without the phrase AI in it at this point? But truly on my end, on the ad side, there's you were talking about agentic agents doing negotiation, things like that. When it comes to the engineering side, it's entering the ad tech conversation everywhere. Do you see any meaningful near-term applications for AI in live ad insertion, optimization, or troubleshooting? Or, Sarge, you talked about the contextual aspects. I'm former Iris TV, so big on the contextual aspects of all this and where it's going. Anything there where AI, you see it happening in the next 6, 12, 18 months that's really tangible for you?
Yeah, no, I'm working with a company right now. They have an AI system where they go and take your source content, mostly VOD, and strip out all the metadata, including the scene level contextualized data. So AI is going to have to do that, because you're not going to sit there manually and watch all that content and do it in real time. I don't think we're there yet, but I think in a couple of months, let's say in the next 18 months, you'll get to where real time AI can do the same thing. Read all the metadata in a stream, and so like if you're watching, I don't know if you're watching like let's say a Cavaliers game, just because I was watching that last night. So if you're watching that game, and if the beard is on the court, so now you can get an ad that features that player basically, right? So and that can be a real-time decision, because the AI can see that, okay, this player is on the court. He has this ad. It's available for the stream because it's been flighted for the stream. So that campaign is available. So let's choose that one because he just made a big shot going into the commercial break. So let's feature his ad. That type of thing can be done real time, versus if you try to do it manually, it's not going to work. Um, you do bring up a good point about testing and agents. We know that some of the observability platforms like Viva, they do have AI in their tools. So they're leveraging AI to pull out some, to look at and the measurements and make some sense real time of what they're seeing in the streams, which is very valuable. Other places AI will be used for live specifically is those dashboards I talked about where you have an overkill of information. AI can help you, some agents can help you make sense of that information because you can actually have agents watching and then they can feed to each other in real time what's going on so that your human eyes, as you're watching a stream and you're looking at dashboards, you can have an agent that's there with you as like another worker for you to help make sense of the data you're seeing.
I see it having an effect everywhere, right? It's AI is pervasive into all the things that we generally do, whether it's from better personalization capabilities at the decisioning layer down to optimizing delivery with path and cache determination and management, better monitoring metric capabilities and aggregation to what Sarge is talking about, right? Understanding the content, creating better ad experiences, and eventually also like I don't see it too far off, although I don't talk dates when it comes to AI stuff. Is creating the ads themselves, right? Generating the ads based off the content, based off what I know about the user to create the optimal matching of what could connect to the user and make that successful while dealing with governance and brand safety and all this other stuff. So if it hallucinates, it doesn't do something really, really bad.
Yeah.
Right. And so forth. Like we're headed in a really interesting and definitely dynamic new direction. The when and the exact hows and so forth are, to me, very unknown, but it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, CJ, I think it's a question, and like you said, you have to have AI in anything you talk about, right? I think first and foremost, we look at it from a sort of a real practical level and operational level. We've taken the majority of our shift notes from the broadcast side, the majority of everything that we have related to our technical facilities, and entered it into our company silo, so that there's really a database that's slowly building of all of our gear, all of the problems that have occurred. And we're looking to kind of, you could take something like a streaming path. Here's all our equipment. Here's the things we've typically seen. So really, when it comes to anomaly detection, that's our first piece. Is there something going on that we don't see that it can query from past data? And then sort of that, what's the root cause? How do you, that concatenation or that clustering to say, hey, we saw something happen before with a specific DA that was throwing an error in the SDI world, and it was somehow, manifesting as an error on the streaming side. Those are the biggest pieces we're looking at, is to build sort of our own database, the sort of help desk where AI can help, an engineer, he's buried in something with a production problem. Now we have this, we want him to be able to use a tool to quickly maybe get some pointers on it. So that's really our approach. And then as we talk from an as run side of the house, going back to the traditional traffic model, since we're taking a lot of this stuff that we're getting back from whether it's HTS or Playfly and trying to aggregate it all into a complete sales picture and a billing picture, being able to scrub things for all of, kind of like what Sarge said, if the beard is on, are we doing beard oil? Did we have a drop-in element that was fired that we didn't catch, but it's key to our Subaru vendor, whatever it might be. So being able to go back and recognize all those elements and then somehow aggregate those into the primary as run and get that off to accounting, pay the bills.
That's the dream. No, definitely.
Yeah. That was a
Well,
good. Let me just dovetail into
yeah.
that. So for everyone who's not an NBA fan, the beard is James Harden.
We know. Yeah, I know.
Well, but some people who are watching, they may not know. So,
We
uh,
used to run Houston, Comcast Sportsnet Houston out of our shop for a while. So we got
yeah,
a lot of James Harden.
nice. But Dave brings up a good point. From a just from a financial standpoint, and taking, like he said, the ads runs, and then previous events so that you can crunch all those numbers. We often have to contact multiple different teams when we're doing our run up and trying to provision how much load do we actually think we're going to have for the stream based on previous events. Something like a Monday Night Football, it's going to be kind of week to week based on where the teams are, record wise in the season break, and also who's actually available to play. Like, so if your main player is not playing, then oftentimes your viewership is going to dip because if Josh Allen's not playing, I really don't want to see it. If Lamar's not playing, I really don't want to see them play. But they're going to play together week one, then that's going to be a premier game. So taking all that data and crunching it is really hard for a team of people. If we can just throw it in the AI and build something that we can just push a button and have it spit out projections, that'd be great. The other thing that David touched on was, and something I talked about also, was being able to take your backlog of content and create something fresh and new for a user, and that's personalized using Gen AI. You can use something like Adobe Firefly, which is brand safe, and trains on your own content, so it's not going up into a cloud. That allows companies to take their existing assets and build something fresh and new without having to build out a full campaign for it. So I think some of the agentic thing, I'm sorry, some of the Gen AI things will be happening in the future as well.
I like what you said, Sarge, about, we started off, in my opinion, like one of the biggest problems is the unpredictable elements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if AI can level that curve, I don't think it's going to, be perfect. Or otherwise, like, hey, everyone can make a lot of money on the stock market. But if it could, level that out a little bit, and make it so it's more predictable, less of these issues, and more, signals versus just, right? That could be really valuable, just to automate provisioning and other things and so forth, and to help with those solutions.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, look, I just quick time check. We've got about 12 minutes left. I encourage the audience, if you have any questions for this panel, please drop them in. We've got one I'll come to after this final question on my list. But if you have any other questions for the panelists, please feel free to do so, and I'll pick those up just after this. But we talked about the outlook and on AI, but just in general, looking ahead the next 2, 3 years. What does a best in class live monetization stack look like to you from your vantage point? And I know we talked a little bit, David, about nonlinear ads coming up now, with L bars and pips and so forth, um, uh, the new IAB new ad formats, but what is that? Not just on the, from the engineering lens and the product lens, what does that look like for you guys?
Were you talking to David or Dave?
Everyone, anyone who wants to kind of speak to your, we'll kind of
Well,
close out this question with kind of
yeah,
your
no, I'll
outlook
make it
on,
quick. So on our
yeah,
on our linear side, we have a great deal of that already. Every time the ref comes to make a call directly to the camera, we're trying to slam something in. A lot of that's done directly from the site. We have certain things we're rolling out of master control. We aren't decorating specifically for that at this time because we have a little bit of a concern about colliding. Right? We don't want to put an L bar over an L bar over a snipe, right? So there's always that challenge. But I think, as we're looking forward, we're really trying to say, how do we maximize that? How do we turn it into a truly fun product to watch without feeling like the old Saturday Night Live skit where you're looking out through the center of a million little graphics, right? And how do we not degrade from the game or detract from the game? Because that's our customers are there to see the event. All this fun stuff that we're doing with this decoration and that is, it's a byproduct. It's very important, no question, but we don't want to detract from that. So it's a balance between production, between, the drive to put as much in as we can. But sometimes that 5 pound bag has already got 50 pounds in it.
Mhm.
So the correct balance to working with ad sales and the programming groups and to really give everyone their space. That's our biggest challenge. But I think eventually you get a really nice organic looking show. I mean, everything flows together, and that's always our end goal. And to tell the story, because we're homers, so we're always wanting to tell the homer story. But that's just the RSN view. we're the greatest thing we know.
Well, even tying onto that, like, to me, it starts at, discoverability, then goes to access, then to the experience, right? I'm not going to touch on access with rights and RSNs right now because that's a whole nother mess. But those are all key elements, and the experience is super important. Like, I do think the future is going to be driven more towards things like nonlinear concurrent ads and so forth. But you're absolutely right. You touch on a key thing that's I don't think talked about a lot is like, cool, how do we not mess this up too? Like if we're saying, hey, we want to get away from disrupting that experience, disrupting the content, but still monetize it. If we just slap everything right on top of it, that does that actually help? I think, okay, great, makes me not want to go, use the ad break as a bathroom break because I don't want to miss the content, but I'm going to be frustrated with the experience that I get nonetheless, right? So it's reducing maybe some of that friction, but definitely not solving it. I think you got to find that right level with the experience, and the experience goes beyond just that. It's also does latency really make that much of a difference, and what do we really gain out of that? Like I think so much time there's so much focus on we got to go really low latency, and to me I like to always quote Sarge in this, but why? What do you actually want? What do you actually need? And if you're doing things like betting and so forth, that's the right answer, right? That is a valid answer. But for just general stuff, like okay, I want to beat broadcast. Well, what good does that do for you? You might want to match broadcast. That's a whole different level of thing, and it's a different level of latency. So I see a lot of things that are going to need to be continually addressed and worked through, and stability and so forth with that, and AI having more creative freedom and other elements that we can do within there. But there's still a lot that we got to work through in all three of those channels. Everything from discoverability, which is still a major problem. Oftentimes, to find what they want in this wonderful world of so many different subscriptions and platforms and rights and other stuff, to go down to how we can actually truly enjoy it.
It was great when we were just a needle in a haystack. Now there's a million haystacks.
Right? Exactly.
Well, my one takeaway there is that the robots are not taking over tomorrow. So as we talk about job
No.
stability in the industry, I think we're innovating towards something with these tool sets and not
Let me
wanting to
add
get
just
away yet.
one thing, CJ. I'm gonna come from a different slant from the operational standpoint. One of the things we started talking about is just you're gonna have failure. So how do you respond to the failures? So you got to have a team in place, and especially for tentpole events, you want to make sure everybody that's in the stack that touches the stream, whether it's from ingest, from the camera down to the fiber providers, make sure everyone is on the same page as far as the delivery. And when there's issues, make sure everyone has a playbook that they can run, not only their own individual departmentalized playbook, but a full event playbook so that when something happens, you know who to call. That's most important in preventing failures or responding to failures in stream. Because like we said at the top, they're going to happen. Your job is to respond to it and get that stream back to the viewer as quickly as possible so they can enjoy the experience. So you want to minimize the impact to the experience for the player. Sorry, for the viewer, whether that's an ad experience or a non-ad experience.
No, that's fantastic. And look, we have about 5 minutes left. There's two questions in the chat, so I'm just going to toss them out there. If anyone has any thoughts, the first one is, what architectural choices most impact stream stability during peak concurrency, e.g., major sports events? Any follow-up comments to kind of conversation earlier about certain vendors or certain types of vendors that you're focused on as far as stability? We're looking forward to having more stability from in the future.
Redundancy and scalability. Like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's a broad question.
Yeah, it is.
So you're
Yeah,
going to get a
understood.
very broad answer, right? So whatever is going to be, the first thing is like, great, you can always handle that kind of burst if you fully are doing, multi-path delivery upfront and full redundancy, but it's super expensive, right? So if
Mhm.
I have everything over provisioned, I'm always going to be safe, but I'm throwing away money, right? And you can kind of try to find that right balance between having some of that and keeping a little bit of, active in a basic concept, and then also look towards how you can scale with that, right? And the best things also come down to practice with different strategies, and know what you can do and can't do, so that you don't make a bad decision when things get hot.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Definitely scalability and redundancy. So you got to have a disaster recovery plan. You got to have some type of redundancy, whether you're fully redundant across the entire stack or not. And like David said, it can get expensive, but um, you'll learn over, or like you said, practice, practice, practice. So as you have multiple events, you'll learn how to properly scale your systems. Like the example I gave before about Monday Night Football, one Monday Night Football game may be high concurrent versus the other based on the player. So as a team, you'll look at the event itself and say, okay, we know we did this for the previous Monday, but these two players are missing from this game, so we don't expect the concurrency to be at the same level. So we can kind of scale back, or maybe we scale up more. So it does take practice, and then load testing. Like I don't think a lot of teams do load testing. But to me, how do you know where your failures are going to be before the event if you don't load test it?
Yeah, I think Sarge nailed it. Look, we knowing the event you're heading into and making plans appropriate for that. A Monday Night Football is a very different animal than a high school football game.
Hmm.
And in a high school football game, we may be thinking more about graceful degradation than we are thinking about the redundancy, right?
Hmm.
But that said, you're not always afforded that luxury.
No, fantastic. One more from the crowd. Um, how important is it for content or media creators to provide their own metadata, either manual or AI generated, in order to maintain control, access, and value of that metadata instead of relying or expecting on a third-party partner to define what their media is? So in-house versus outsource. Any thoughts on kind of metadata management there?
I mean, how important it is how important is the accuracy as well. If you
Yeah.
do it in house, you get to control that through the chain and so forth. And if that accuracy isn't 100% required or isn't as important, then it isn't as critical a factor necessarily. As soon as you kind of give your keys to the kingdom to someone else in this regard, you have to be either A, very trusting of their quality and what they can achieve with it, or be accepting of what you're going to get back. And that goes from there. And they might be able to do better than what you can provide in house, but that really is very specific to the providers that you're working with, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point. Look, as a group, we delivered of ubiquity, we delivered all over the place, and all the metadata specs are all different. And the Hulu specs are different. Everybody's specs are different, right? So I think adhering to a spec, agreeing to that, it'd be great. I would love if top-notch metadata came to us. I'd say number one, control your captioning properly, control your
Mm-hmm.
second languaging properly. If you got those two
Mm-hmm.
done, we can handle the rest. But that said, if you can meet the spec and meet the spec with consistency is the trick. Once a month doesn't cut it. So I would offer, as David said, yeah, it's keys to the kingdom in some regard, and it can have a massive impact on your stream, on your channel strips, for VOD, whatever it might be, because we're not necessarily the end user of this. So we're playing to our customers, and when I'm sending out, whatever the old TMS IDs, whatever we're doing, whether it's Grace Note or whatever, they're very very specific. And one thing can mangle a channel strip for an important event.
Yeah, I know the IAB Tech Lab is working on a live event metadata spec. So I'm not sure where they are with. I know someone from the IAB is in the audience, so maybe they could post a link to it. But to your point, it's very important to get it correct. Like David said, you want to own it yourself. But there's trade-offs with how good your tech is and finding the metadata and keeping it proper versus that third party and how do you trust. Hopefully you got a third party that's really good at creating the metadata and you would still own it. So they create it for you, but it lives in your system, so you get to choose where it goes.
Yeah, if the contractual metadata is locked and loaded, let's start there. You're squared away with programming,
Hmm.
because everything trickles down from there.
And
Yeah.
just to
Data is
follow,
so valuable too. Like if you have good data and you own it, that does increase your overall potential and capabilities and value as deemed from outside sources.
Yep.
gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for your time today. Just a shout out to Brad Pipkin from IAB. He's posted that link about the forecasting API and the advanced TV work group. So again, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today. Steve, I'll toss it back
Thanks,
to you.
CJ.
Thank you, CJ.
Thanks,
Yeah.
CJ.
Yeah, thank you so much, CJ, David, Dave, and Sarge. This has been great. It's great to have you all here. And before we go, I just want to congratulate Molly Turner, our gift card winner for this session, who was the first person to correctly identify I Will Survive by Cake featuring the late, great Greg Brown. Please join us back here at, what time is it going to be? 4 o'clock Eastern Time, 1 o'clock Pacific for Let's Talk Shop, Strategies and Solutions for Shopifying CTV in 2026. Hope to see you all then. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.